Tuesday, December 23rd, 2025, 2038 local time. At this exact moment, air traffic control screens in Ankara lost all contact with a Dassault Falcon 50 flying south toward the Mediterranean. No altitude, no transponder return, no voice from the cockpit, just silence. 30 minutes earlier, the aircraft had lifted off smoothly from Ankara Esenboğa Airport, climbing into the winter night. The destination was Tripoli-Mitiga International Airport, a non-scheduled charter flight carrying 8 people. Among them was General Mohammed Ali Ahmed Al-Haddad, Chief of Staff of the Libyan Armed Forces. The jet was registered 9HDFS, operated by Harmony Jets Malta, with manufacturer serial number 185. A trijet designed for long-range executive transport, the Falcon 50 had a reputation for reliability, redundancy, and performance. That reputation would soon be tested. At 2017, the Falcon 50 departed runway at Ankara Esenboğa Airport. Weather conditions were reported as stable, with no immediate hazards requiring special handling. The aircraft climbed normally, contacting departure control and transitioning to en route airspace. From the outside, nothing appeared abnormal. Inside the cockpit, however, a complex web of electrical systems was powering navigation, communication, flight instruments, and engine monitoring. In modern jets, electricity is not a convenience, it is survival. By 2031 local time, the aircraft had reached approximately flight level 320, around 32,000 feet above sea level. At this altitude, the Falcon was well above terrain, operating in thin air, where pressurization, avionics, and flight control assistance are essential. That was when the first warning was transmitted. The crew contacted air traffic control and issued a pan-pan call. A pan-pan is not a distress call. It is a declaration of urgency, a signal that something is wrong and assistance may soon be required. The message was clear: general electrical malfunction. Electrical failures in flight are among the most complex emergencies pilots can face. Unlike engine failures, which are mechanical and often isolated, electrical issues can cascade, disabling instruments, radios, navigation, and even flight control augmentation. The crew requested radar vectoring to return to Ankara. They were calm, they were professional, and they were already planning their way back. ATC response. Controllers responded immediately, issuing headings and descent instructions to guide the Falcon back toward Esenboğa Airport. The aircraft began its descent from FL 320, turning back northward. At this stage, radar tracking was still active. Altitude, speed, and position were visible. But that would not last. 2 minutes later, at 2033, the situation escalated. The pilot declared an emergency. This was no longer a cautionary event. Something had worsened. At the same time, controllers noticed that altitude data was no longer updating reliably on their screens. This is a critical clue. Loss of altitude data suggests problems with transponders, pitot-static systems, or electrical buses powering avionics. In many aircraft, these systems are interconnected. Redundancy exists, but only if power remains available. Transfer to approach. At 2035, the flight was instructed to contact Esenboğa approach control, which they successfully did. Communication was still possible, but something had changed. The controller later noted that the pilot's voice became difficult to hear. This could indicate failing radio power, electrical bus shedding, degraded audio systems, or cockpit workload overwhelming the crew. Meanwhile, radar returns began to degrade. At 2036, air traffic control observed partial losses of flight information on radar. The aircraft was no longer a stable target. Data flickered.
Altitude was unreliable. Identification tags dropped in and out. From a controller's perspective, this is deeply unsettling. From a pilot's perspective, it is terrifying. At night, in winter, descending toward rising terrain. At 20:38 local time, the Falcon 50 disappeared from radar. No further transmissions were received. No ELT signal was immediately detected. Minutes later, reports would emerge of an aircraft crashing into Salamamaz Hill, approximately 2 kilometers south of Haymana Kesikavak village. All 8 occupants were killed. The aircraft was destroyed. When investigators later reconstructed the final minutes of Falcon 50 registration 9HDFS, one phrase appeared repeatedly in early reports: general electrical malfunction. Those 3 words, transmitted calmly at 20:31 local time, may explain almost everything that followed. To understand how a modern trijet vanished from radar and crashed into terrain, we must first understand how electricity governs flight and what happens when it begins to disappear system by system at altitude. The Falcon 50 electrical architecture. The Dassault Falcon 50 was designed with redundancy in mind. It features multiple engine-driven generators, backup batteries, separate electrical buses, and emergency power logic to preserve critical systems. In theory, no single electrical failure should cause catastrophic loss of control. But aviation accidents are rarely caused by a single failure. They are caused by chains. Generator failure, the first link. A general electrical malfunction suggests more than a tripped breaker or failed screen. It implies a loss of generating capacity, possibly from one or more engine-driven generators, a common electrical bus fault, wiring damage, or overvoltage or undervoltage conditions. At FL320, generators are under high load. Pressurization systems, autopilot, navigation computers, weather radar, communication radios. If one generator fails, load is redistributed. If 2 fail, the system enters load shedding mode. This is when non-essential systems shut down automatically. Sometimes essential systems follow. Why the PAN-PAN mattered. At 20:31, the crew's choice to issue PAN-PAN rather than Mayday tells us something important. At 20:31, they believed the aircraft was still controllable, navigation and communication were still available, a safe return was possible. This suggests the failure was progressive, not instantaneous. But electrical failures don't always progress slowly. They cascade. Autopilot and flight control effects. The Falcon 50 uses electrically powered systems to assist flight control. Autopilot, flight director, stability augmentation. Loss of electrical power can disconnect autopilot unexpectedly, remove flight director guidance, increase pilot workload dramatically. At night, without visual references, this workload becomes critical. Now add descending, turning, communicating with ATC, managing emergency checklists, all while systems degrade. The altitude data loss. At 20:33, controllers noticed something alarming. Altitude data was no longer updating reliably on their screens. This is a critical clue. Loss of altitude data suggests problems with transponders, pitot-static systems, or electrical buses powering avionics. In many aircraft, these systems are interconnected. Redundancy exists, but only if power remains available. The radio degradation, the voice clue. At 20:36, the controller noted that the pilot's voice became difficult to hear. This detail is crucial. Radio clarity depends on stable power, audio amplifiers, and proper antenna function. A weakening signal suggests battery-only operation, failing avionics bus, impending total electrical loss. The crew was likely switching between radios, attempting to preserve contact. Every second costs seconds. Every second matters. Cockpit nightmare scenario. Imagine the cockpit at this stage. Instrument backlighting dim or gone. Screens flickering or black. Autopilot disconnected. Navigation unreliable. Terrain unseen in darkness. Pilots train for this, but training cannot replicate progressive blindness. The human brain depends on stable reference points. When those vanish, spatial disorientation follows, especially at night. Why radar contact was lost. At 2038, the aircraft disappeared from radar. No transmissions were received. No ELT signal was immediately detected. Just before 2038, the aircraft would have been passing through around 8,000 feet above sea level.